Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chuck Hemenway with the Copyright Clearance Center. Two tough acts to follow, especially after chocolate cake. Everybody's fighting it. It was very good. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our experience around APIs, specifically as it relates to commerce, and even more specifically as it relates to author commerce, the transactions that you have to do with your author community. And so I thought we'd start at the beginning, because the way I read the description of this session was, I thought, speaking a little bit to the marketing elements inside publishing, some that don't have a good awareness of what APIs are, why they're important, and how they're being used. So I figured we'd start at the beginning. First, the earth cooled, then the dinosaurs came. APIs came shortly thereafter. They're not new. They've been around for a while. But for those that don't have a good working knowledge of them, the item in red is the key here. It allows systems to interact. And for a long time, before APIs, we relied on FTP and a lot of other methods that seemed just Jim dandy at the time. But they did not provide the two-way discourse between systems, and that was extremely limiting. For those that have never seen an API in captivity, here's one. It's not scary. It's data formatted in a certain way so that when certain values are present, certain things happen. But nonetheless, I would not like to try and write it. So for the rest of us, API is the utility that connects those two systems for that bidirectional conversation. And that's an absolutely crucial role, because in the days of sharing data in an automated way, it accounts for things like failed attempts. If your data doesn't reach its destination, what happens? APIs send it again. If the receiving API finds an error, what happens? It reaches out to the originating API to resend again. So it really is the key to having good real-time data in the market. And that's extremely important in our business, because we're finding that the more we talk with publishers and the more we talk with their clients, that there are no more standard types of transactions anymore. The exception is the standard. The days of having a single price for services and goods and APCs and everything that you're selling, that's all gone, right? Rarely are two transactions the same. So for us, we look at APIs as a means to an end. They allow us, on your behalf, to have accurate, immediate data. They allow us to scale infinitely. They allow us to try new business models for you, the ones that you invent and we implement. And they also give us something that is always lacking, and that's speed. You know, in many cases, previous methods of moving data back and forth were not exactly what you'd call real time, the nightly batching and loading and all sorts of various Iron Age practices. API transmission of data allows us to react to changes in the market in real time. So the example is when a manuscript reaches approval status, within 60 seconds, we can see that, we can react to that, and we can initiate another process on behalf of a publisher. So who has an interest? Well, there's two groups, internal and external to your organizations. I think internally, they're very common stakeholders that you're always working with: finance, marketing, production, editorial. They all have needs. And a lot of these needs can be met by thinking about the way you touch data, the way you handle and retrieve data, And they're also the ones that are going to ask production teams and publishing teams to do things, to do stuff, right? Hey, we want to do a promotion. Hey, we want to try something new. This is the intersection of all of the standards talk in the last few years. When we have standards and when we have APIs, a lot of the stuff that they're asking you for becomes within reach. Externally, there's a lot of data that you need to get, and we need to get for you as we do our business. And that means verifying authors' identities. Are you who you say you are? Are you associated with this particular institution? Do you have funding? All of those sorts of things. Those can be had in real time. And frankly, that's the only way to go. So why all of this interest from a not-for-profit copyright organization? Well, part of our remit is to help you do things efficiently, help you cut costs out of your models, and process transactions, which is something that we're particularly good at. And when we took a serious look at the author payments and author transaction space a couple of years ago, we decided that three things needed to happen, and happen well. The three that you see in this delightful graphic. At the end of the day, all of those wound up being very much driven by APIs. And we found that even when we tried to not use APIs, we wound up right back at the same place. So we adopted a strategy using Microsoft REST, which is fairly compatible with a lot of what's going on in the market. And it gave us what we needed to communicate with the various systems that we have to process a payment from an author. So to go from these three quick steps, in the author's view, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, nearly all of it API-driven. From the initial deposit of the metadata to all of these things you see in this graphic. Soon to include things like VAT validation, membership validation, subscription purchase, membership purchase. The only way to do any of these in a practical way, in a scalable way, is via API. So I think what I'm trying to drive at with this slide and with this presentation is for those of you in marketing and not very close to production, it's time to think about how accessible are some of these values that you want to use in the calculus that you present the market. So if you want to offer some sort of consideration for being a member, a subscriber, affiliation with an institution, start thinking about the data you have and how can it be accessed. And sometimes that's a function of working with your partners, working with the folks in the space that are doing the work for you, but nonetheless, you should be thinking about it and talking about it. And believe it or not, that's an abbreviation. By the time we've received the first box, upstream partners that are handling the manuscript have made several API calls before that. So the whole transaction chain for a manuscript has many, many calls with APIs back and forth. And I think we were surprised in the last few years in talking with society and association publishers how few had taken any initiative around things like membership. We're not able to validate member ID numbers because there just is no structure for a lot of the publishers. So that was my thinking in trying to get you to talk internally, talk about your strategy. And it's mostly, as Alice said, it's about your business strategy, what you want to accomplish, and then taking an inventory of the data you're going to need to accomplish it, and if the necessary tools are in place to get there. So here's a screen that was provided by my marketing department, shamelessly showing my solution. But in the first screen that a publisher, an author sees, there's 4 or 5 values on the page that have already been provided by API. And it just continues to snowball, so that by the time the transaction's over, there may be 7, 8, 9 values that have been API generated. The other interesting thing we found in the last 2 years is the interest in real-time reporting and the movement away from web-based Excel-type reporting needs. Publishers have been very clear in telling us we have internal systems, we have dashboards, and we're hearing that from universities and institutions now. We have CRIS systems, we have grant management systems. We don't want another dashboard. We want to be able to get to the data, extract it, and pump it into our systems, because that's where we do our business, that's where we do our work. So we've done a very robust development around the back end of our solutions, getting the data out, getting the transaction data, the payment data, getting all of that stuff out of our systems into your systems where you can act on it, trigger production, all of those practical things. So, if you're in marketing and you want to do stuff, it pays to start thinking from the data out, right? If I want to do promotions, if I want to drive membership, subscription, if I want to do not just simply sell things or collect an APC or subscription dollars, but if I want to cross-pollinate existing customers with new offers and new opportunities as they check out and all of that sort of stuff that happens today when you buy a book from Amazon, right? If you want to do those things as a marketer, you need to at some point include APIs in your strategy to make sure that you have the inventory of tools to be flexible, be creative, and be successful. And that's all I have. In many cases, that's exactly correct, and I think we're probably going to hear about that from the next speaker. But yeah, obviously what they do is they allow you to take data that's available and move it into a system of your preference, right? To move it into the interfaces you want to work in, or other systems, right, sometimes. But I hope, does that answer your question? It's. Yeah. In some cases, that's absolutely easy to do and possible to do, but I think in a lot of cases, the publishers in this room are working with other vendors and partners that really would be the ones to, execute against their strategies. So I think it pays to talk with them, all right? If you're fomenting a journal strategy, launch, we're doing this, we're doing that, talk to your providers to find out what can you offer us, and what are the costs of using it? And because I think more and more how you use APIs are going to be a consideration in the vendors you choose, right? And if they, if they charge a fortune for every small change, that's a consideration. So these are the kinds of things that need to be front of mind as you work with your vendors. Any other questions?
I'm going to hawk the show. So you brought up both subscriptions and membership in your presentation. And sorry to draw us back to the beginning comments again.
Go ahead.
But here we go. This is a real-world example of where is the collaboration between the many systems that are subscription systems on the market and the many systems that are membership systems on the market and the Copyright Clearance Center. What is in the best interest of a publisher in regards to APIs? You know, if I would, the community solution. What is the right community solution for that type of intersection? Who wins?
Well, I think that's a fair question. I would say that as far as, you know, our thinking around this is that we don't do the thinking anymore. We've stopped trying to predict what publishers need or what we think they need, because their needs are all different. And if you ask 4 different publishers, what do you want most? Do you want money? Do you want members? Do you want subscribers? You'll get 4 different answers. So we're actively moving into a space where, as customers come through our hands, you're going to have the opportunity to barter with them. Because if you'd rather have a member or a subscriber than a few $100s for a permissions transaction or a full price for an APC, we shouldn't get in the way of that. But in no way will you see CCC prescribe anything. In this new platform, it's up to the publisher to make those choices, and we'll execute for them. But I think it's pretty exciting because, especially for societies and associations, you know, money isn't everything. In many cases, they desperately want members. In some cases, with new journals, they would rather have a reviewer. I had publishers ask me, well, could we exchange a lower APC for a promise to be a reviewer, a referee? The more we think about this, the more ideas that surface about things that will be bartered for at some point in a payment transaction. Young lady?
Jeff, I think what's also important is that in our, our open access service, we have a standard API, and that API talks to the areas that it's where managers. It talks to highlighted benefits. It talks to install and one. It talks to email facts. It talks to publisher production system. It talks to the financial system. So how you structure the data and using very standard data elements with some flexibility in another block for things that you don't necessarily know up front is super important. So that the APIs can talk across and create a lot of interoperability when they're well structured.
Yeah. I think we're really at the point now where folks are getting on the standards bandwagon. They're understanding the importance of institutional identifiers, ORCID, all of these things. And with APIs as a method of transmission, it really opens the door to doing the stuff, whatever the stuff is for the marketing types. Sir?
Question kind of for all the speakers. How do you address the procedural rule that APIs offer an efficient means for competitors to stock all the content out of your system over a period of several hours, and then somehow reduce your product? I think that's something that people worry about.
Gentlemen?
Rate limiting. Essentially, what you just put up on your system is a cap on how many requests, how many records can be pulled out at any given time. So what we do, we look at these use cases, ones that I showed, and look at our usage data to see what are reasonable volumes to meet those use cases. And Scopus has somewhere in the range of, I don't know, tens of millions of records. It takes a long time to suck that out. So good luck trying to do that without us noticing and then putting an end to it. So.